are you listening to? Straight Talk with Kim and Carolyn.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Kim and Carolyn. I'm Kim.
I'm Carolyn.
We have with us tonight someone who is just a big fan of Greta, our teenage woke ambassador to the globe.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We have Representative Ken Ivory, District, what is it again? 39? 39?
Yeah, the new one's 39. Currently 47. With the changes, it'll be 39.
Okay, so Ken Ivory is the state house rep over parts of West Jordan. What else do you have, Ken?
South Jordan, Midvale, a little bit of Murray.
Okay.
A little bit of Sandy, actually.
Ken is the legislator that's always ahead of the game, always steps ahead of everybody else, knows what's coming around the corner intuitively, also because he just knows his stuff. So Ken's always been a defender of Utah's public lands and trying to work to place those more under our control as a state, and probably best known for his work on federalism and keeping distinctions between the roles of the federal government, which are supposed to be few, and enumerated role of the federal government, and retaining power to the states. But now we have an insidious work of the federal government in the Biden administration to have yet another big smack to the state of Utah. And so let's welcome Representative Ken Ivory. Tell us how they're set to destroy us now.
Which arrow is going to kill us this time, right? I mean, the thing that's critical that you mentioned is anytime the federal government takes away our decision-making power, you lose your voice. Anytime they take over education, they take over land, they take over forest management,
health,
they take over funding, healthcare, right? Insurance, you lose your voice, because unless you can weigh in with $100 million to lobby Washington, you don't play. So that's why it's so critical to keep the decision making here, because as you've seen, when the decisions are made here, you can get engaged and you can change policy all the way through the process. But the minute Washington puts its hands on anything, you lose your voice, and that's the critical aspect of self-governance. So what's happening now?
But hold on, don't you? We still have a voice with the federal government, because when they make new rules, they let us speak. And I know everybody's paying attention to every time the federal government makes a new rule. We're all weighing in the public comment period, because everybody knows exactly how that works,
and
right?
Let's be honest, they're listening even if we were.
And we all know about it. They're letting us know that this rulemaking is happening. They're letting us know, and they're asking us, please come weigh in on these policies. We really want to hear from the people of Utah. No, not at all.
And I think, Ken, as you talk about some of these environmental regulations, I would like you as an attorney to address the recent EPA case that where the Supreme Court did weigh in and say you cannot, and you tell me from an attorney's perspective if I'm getting any of this wrong or I'm not hitting the whole picture, but no, you can't turn everything over to the agency where they promulgate all kinds of new rules.
Okay, so let's take that in pieces.
Of local government. But I think that should be a part of this discussion, right?
Okay, so what's going on?
Yeah, they have something called the major decisions doctrine. And so what Congress has gotten used to doing is they'll say, we like clean air and we like clean water. Agencies, you handle it. And so they'll pass the Clean Air Act or the Clean Water Act, and that's it. We want clean air. Agency, you go do everything. And so they go out and make all these major sweeping decisions. But what the Supreme Court said is major decisions have to be made by Congress. It was a huge deal. It was a huge deal, the West Virginia versus EPA, because what the agency said was, we're going to start making rules as to what kind of power a power company can produce inside the fence. And they said, no. That's a major decision. We're not going to let the agency on its own decide the very nature of how power is produced. And so they kick that back. That has a lot of implications for a lot of other cases, that the agency can make rules and regulations to implement, but they can't make major decisions. And so that was the import of that case. Sorry, my dogs are getting excited. Somebody's probably dropping off a package.
Okay, so tell us about the new environmental regulations that are just coming fast and furiously from the federal government.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
So get this, on December 16th of 2020, right? So this is right after the election. Biden has not even been inaugurated yet. The Center for Biological Diversity meets with President-elect Biden. And at that time, they still didn't know how the Georgia Senate race was going to turn out. And so the Senate, it was still largely believed that the Senate was going to fall into Republican control. So December 16th, 2020, Center for Biological Diversity, with thousands of other extremist environmental organizations signing on, handed President Biden the Climate President Action Plan. And they said, these are the 10 things you can do, you're going to do basically, without Congress. These are 10 actions you can take unilaterally without Congress at all. And they list them out. It rejoined the Paris Climate Accord, which he does immediately, first day in office. 30 by 30, lock up 30% of all land and water by the year 2030. Use the Clean Air Act to stop all emissions, drive emissions to zero, stop all fossil fuel production, eliminate all fossil fuel leases on federal land, jack up the royalties, declare a climate emergency, make polluters pay, advance environmental justice, and things like that. So there's a list of 10 things that they say, this is what you can do unilaterally without Congress. So what we're going to see now, a lot of them they've already done. So his first week in office, he did Executive Order 14008. And in that one, he orders the 30 by 30, that lock up 30% of all land and water by the year 2030, on the way to locking up 50% of all land by 2050. Now, the 30 by 30 group in Utah says that even though Utah has 65% federal land, get this, 65% federally controlled land, they say Utah's only 12% protected. So they still need to take 17% more of Utah land. They've got a 9 million acre monument already spelled out, ready for the stroke of a pen. So that's already in the works.
Where's that, Ken?
Red Rock Wilderness Act is what they're looking at, and it's all over the state. It kind of horseshoes around the whole state, 9 million acres. So that's what happens. I mean, when we don't show any propensity to push back, they take more, and then they take more, and they take more, and they take more, and if we don't show a propensity to stop them, then why wouldn't they?
And
so they're moving on that.
Don't we have some of our elected officials, federal elected officials from Utah, who claimed that if they just negotiated in good faith on some of these other monuments, that the Red Rock Wilderness Act was never going to pass? That was just games they've been playing in Congress by putting that piece of legislation up. For how many years? Hasn't it been like 15 years they've been putting this up?
Oh, yeah, for a long time. I mean, it's the crown jewel for them. And see, they play the long game, right? So, I mean, the minute Biden was elected, they had the plan already laid out. They had the legal briefs already laid out. They had the talking points already laid out. So the minute he was elected, they said, here's the executive order you're going to sign. And in the first week in office, he signs it. Now, so get this. So then they also say complete decarbonization, and that every agency has to have their decarbonization plan. So the Department of Education has decarbonization plan. The Department of Defense has a decarbonization plan because, of course, you can fly jets and battleships without, diesel fuel and aviation gas and all that. You can just run those on windmills, apparently. Full decarbonization plan.
I really just want the Department of Defense to protect me. I really want that to be their sole purpose, period. Right? Get rid of wokeness, get rid of decarbonization, just protect our nation. That's all I ask.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of things in there. And then so complete electric vehicle and complete decarbonization, take 30% of land and water by 2030. And then in May of 2021, he did Executive Order 14030, and that one spelled out the social cost of greenhouse gas, that you have a social cost of greenhouse gas score. And so they say this out loud, and they say it like they're proud of it. The federal government is the world's single largest purchaser of goods and services. And they say, we're going to use that as a tool to strategically shape the markets. We're the world's largest commercial actor, the federal government. We used to run on 3% of GDP, the federal government. Now it's 26% of GDP, and it's the world's largest purchaser of goods and services. So now they say you have to have an appropriate social cost of greenhouse gas to sell any goods to the federal government or to get any federal benefits. And they spell it out. So lending, insurance, all underwriting. If you don't have the appropriate social cost of greenhouse gas, you don't sell to the federal government, you don't get benefits from the federal government. That's already on the books.
So does this tie into the ESG policies that we're...
Yeah, exactly. So the ESG is private. That's being pushed privately. And so then the 30 by 30 and the decarbonization is the public side. So the federal government pushing all of that. And so now in this latest Inflation Production Act, it's not an inflation reduction, it's Inflation Production Act.
I like that.
They've got like $400 billion of pushing all of their Green New Deal stuff. Last April, most people really missed this. At one point, Biden invoked the Defense Production Act. And the Defense Production Act allows the president to take the military budget and use it unilaterally. So he invoked the Defense Production Act, but he said, we're just going to study how to do wind and solar research a little bit better. But he already invoked it. So it's sitting out there. He's invoked the power. Nobody's pushed back against it. Once he invokes the declaration of climate emergency, and again, this is all in the legal brief that they gave him within a couple of weeks of being elected. He invokes the climate emergency. That gives him 133 unilateral powers plus unlimited control over the defense budget. So that we're going to see that after the midterms. And then the next piece is what they call make polluters pay. And make polluters pay, they talk about using the asbestos, tobacco, and opioid litigation models to criminalize anyone in the chain of fossil fuel production. So this is where this is all going.
You know, this disproportionately impacts the poorest among us, too. I mean, we know all these things. We know emerging nations are lifted from poverty with fossil fuels. And this is a fast track to global starvation across the globe when some of these climate policies are put into place. And it's just insidious. I just don't understand why, what is the history book and the science book they're reading from? Because it just doesn't work. So what can we do now that we're horrified? What can we do?
Yeah, well, what's crazy is they're doing it in the name of environmentalism. This is far worse for the environment. You have to dig up 20 to 50 times more earth to do wind and solar and battery. And as it stands now, we have enough battery storage. Get this, at NCSL, they were touting, battery storage capacity has increased 1,200% in recent years. 1,200%, it's gone up 1,200%. And they said, well, can you help me understand from what to what? And what percent of our 4 terawatts of electricity consumption is the 1 gigawatt of battery storage? He says, I can't do that math on the fly. It turns out it's less than 1/5 of 1% that they can store in battery. Less than 1/5 of 1%. And they're pushing everybody out the airplane before they've even designed the parachute.
Yeah.
So what we can do and what we need to do is we need to get behind all of our state leaders, all of our state legislators, and we simply need to push back, right? So first, we need to protect our existing energy and transportation infrastructure. If we transition someday to some other energy and transportation infrastructure, great. When the market's ready and the market can do that, wonderful. And if that's wind and solar and they can get the battery storage worked out, wonderful. We're not anywhere close to that right now, and they're flipping the switch off. In fact, Rocky Mountain Power, under this ozone transport rule where they impute Utah's emissions to Colorado, they're saying by 2026 you have to shut off all your coal-fired power plants. That's 73% of the power in Utah. The lights go out in 2026. Rocky Mountain doesn't have the ability to replace that in 3 years, 3.5 years. There's no way. So under the federal regulations right now, the power goes out in Utah in 2026. So we need to fight the ozone transport rule. But first and foremost, that was never a power delegated to the federal government. So remember at the beginning, we talked about when they take decisions away from you to Washington, you lose your voice.
Yeah.
Well, how many decisions are downstream from energy?
Yeah.
When you got up this morning, it was your alarm clock that got you up. You took a shower with water delivered to you by energy. You had food that was brought to you and produced by energy. Everything in your home is energy. The lights and the things we're communicating with are energy. Everything in our life, that's the master resource. So when they're controlling energy and control all aspects of that, that controls virtually all of our other decisions. So number one, that was never a power delegated to the federal government. So we've got to draw those lines, and we have to protect our existing energy infrastructure. And then the second thing we need to do is work on controlling our lands, because lands are how you develop transmission lines. That's where the natural resources are. So with the federal government controlling 65% of our land, we had the Government Accountability Office in 2016. The Government Accountability Office said there's more recoverable oil in Utah, Colorado, Wyoming than the rest of the world combined.
Wow.
On federally controlled lands, we can't get to it.
And we were well on our way to, energy independence under the previous presidency. We have become an exporter of energy, and we're energy independent. And now we're racing to shut it all down and destroy our livelihoods as we know them.
Yeah. So number one, we've got to protect our existing energy transportation infrastructure until the market has something ready. Yeah. Right now, we're going down the path of Germany, and Germany can't heat their homes and keep the lights on throughout the winter. They already know they're in trouble. Energy costs are doubling month over month in Europe right now. It's taking 30 to 40 to 50% of their household budgets just to get energy in Europe, because they went down this road. It's already failed there. It's already in California. You saw in California where they mandated electric vehicles, and then the very next day they said, sorry, you can't charge your vehicles.
Don't charge them.
Power. You can't have gas vehicles. You got to have EVs, but you can't charge them.
I have this question that keeps coming to mind, though, and that is, through all of these discussions recently, has nobody ever studied a planned economy? Right? Like, planned economies do not work. No matter how much you wish they worked, they do not. They never have. There never has been a successful planned economy. And yet we literally have bureaucrats and elected officials attempting to plan probably, I dare say, the largest economy the world has ever seen. And we think we have what sort of expertise to be able to do that?
But the World Economic Forum, they're smarter than anybody who's ever tried this before.
Yeah, they didn't have computers back then when they were doing the
so they
farm.
can model it better. We've got Davos or putting this together.
We know how much we can trust their modeling based on the IPCC and the crap they've kicked out over the past 20 years.
Sarcasm.
Yeah, quite honestly, our biggest problems right now are not left versus right. Our biggest issues are centralized government versus self-government. We have to get the decision-making back to the states, as you were alluding to, Kim. Federal is 45, numerous and indefinite at the state level, few and defined at the national level. I mean, you just think about it. So I can help your listeners memorize the Constitution in the next 30 seconds. You ready for this?
Okay.
The entire U.S. Constitution. That's the playbook. We got to know what it is. We're the boss, right? We're the sovereign. The entire U.S. Constitution. If government, which government? That's the whole Constitution. If government, which government? Right? So the people are sovereign. All power is inherent in the people. Did we delegate that to any government? Because there's a lot of things we didn't. what we believe, what we think, how we speak, who we associate with, how we worship, defending ourselves. We didn't delegate that to government.
But we also need the
that's
world.
very first question.
We need the World Health Organization too. I mean, let's not forget too that we're struggling to keep those distinctions as a country, while we have a federal government that's relying on other nations, governments, or global entities to dictate
so that
to
gets
us.
to the next point, right? If government, and so then if it is something we delegated to government, if government, then which one?
Mm-hmm.
Did we delegate it to a government far away that's less accountable and less transparent? It's more powerful, but it's less transparent, less accountable. Or did we keep it closer to home where we can keep an eye on things? It's more accountable. We can actually walk right through the process and we can change policy. So because we know things farther away are less transparent, less accountable, we wrote down those few and defined things that we delegated far away. That's the U.S. Constitution. If government, which government, and the few and defined things we delegated farther away, we wrote down very explicitly. Everything else is here where your voice matters. And so that's so critical. We never delegated energy to the national government.
Right.
So we've got to pull that back. So the first thing is we've got to protect the existing energy infrastructure. Second thing is secure our lands and resources. The third thing is the cheapest power and the most reliable power and the most environmentally clean power is nuclear. I mean, we've had battleships and submarines for 50 years with nuclear. We need to get rid of the regulatory hurdles if we want to go to carbon-free power that's reliable and dispatchable. We need to get rid of the hurdles so that it doesn't take 50 years to permit and site and build a nuclear power plant. And then also the NEPA and all the regulatory reform. So we've got to secure the existing energy transportation infrastructure, secure lands and resources, and complete regulatory reform. And that's what we need to be doing with energy. And so we need to get with our legislators, Governor AG, and just really focus on that. Because Rocky Mountain right now, they'll tell you 2026 federal regulations have us turning the lights off in Utah in 2026.
So you mentioned our state leaders, aside from our legislature, that we had Representative Carl Albrecht on a little while ago, who he is working on protecting some of the energy delivery, kind of in the short-term thing ahead of this big move by the federal government. But who else? Is our governor stepping into this? Is our AG stepping into this? Are we just going to wait, cross fingers for the November election that things change? Of course, we do hope things change with the November election, but
we cannot be dependent on that, nor can we be dependent on even any of our federal officials making the right decisions on these things.
So are there moves?
What do members of the public do?
Yeah, so and to your point first, the whole plan that the Center for Biological Diversity gave to President Biden was the Climate President Action Plan, 10 things he can do without Congress. So the president's not going to change in November. They're still moving forward on this plan. The agencies and the president are still moving forward on this plan. So regardless what happens in November, we've got to move and shut this down. So what we do, right? I call it just say no, right? Just say no. You have to know who your agents are, right? If you're the boss of the enterprise, you got to know who you're employing, and not just their name, right? You got to know what motivates them. So you got to know who you hire. You got to know if they know their job, and their job is making sure that the few and defined things are few and defined, and that everything else is in Utah where your voice matters. So do you know who your agent is? Do you know if he or she knows their job? Do you know if they're doing their job? Just say no, KNOW, right? Do you know who you've hired to protect your rights? Do you know if they know their job? Do you know if they're doing their job? And so you make one phone call a week, right? You make one contact a week. So you call the governor, the AG, your state rep, your state senator. You do one a week, so you got 4 weeks, right? The first week you call the governor and say, hey, governor, I'm feeling like the federal government's getting outside of its lane, right? That balance is not what it needs to be. They're not few and defined powers anymore. What are you doing to put them back in their few and defined box? I'll call you back in a couple of weeks. Attorney General, help me understand what you're doing to put them in their few and defined box. I'll call you back in a couple of weeks. The next week, you call your state senator, you call your state representative. Help me understand. I've hired you to keep this constitutional balance in check so that my rights are secured and protected and my voice matters here at the local level. Can you please help me understand what you're doing to keep them in that few and defined constitutional box? And when the people really start demanding that, and that's happening more and more, then we start focusing on these things. And right now, what we're shaping up in the House is to take 4 initiatives to really reestablish those clear lines and roles and responsibilities. The first one is energy. The second one is education. The third is lands and resources. And the fourth is self-defense. So to really draw those clear lines again in establishing those roles and responsibilities. So we start on those, and then there's so many other things to focus on, but that's a pretty good starting place.
So the state legislature is planning on working on this in an organized way?
That's the discussion that I've had so far, but the more we can get people to really focus and drive that agenda. But yeah, I mean, that's the idea. Is I know that the Federalism Commission has spelled out those 4 things, and that's now kind of been established as the federalism push. I don't know if there's a name to the agenda yet, but it's really restoring the roles and responsibilities and putting them back in that little box and reclaiming the people's voice over these things that are just absolutely critical. I mean, if we don't secure affordable, reliable energy, our economy is gone. Our way of life is gone. And as you said, Kim, affordable, reliable energy is the beginning of all prosperity. And it is the most regressive tax. You can't live without energy. So that cost goes up 10%, 50%, 100%, 200, 300% like it is in Europe. Those on the lowest end of the socioeconomic scale are hurt absolutely the worst. It is a dreadful regressive economic, not even a tax. It's a death knell when those prices go up. And then on top of it, it's less reliable.
You know, we've seen the hypocrisy of the left that promotes these climate policies and, you know, with their jets and with their standards of living, that they're not very as impacted by these policies as you say other people are, and just huge hypocrisy there. But
yeah, but it's really sad when you think about what happens. The nations that are trying to industrialize, trying to get to the standard of living that we have, as their use of energy, affordable, reliable energy increases, their life expectancy increases, their wealth increases, their health increases, the environment around them. Poor people don't care about the environment, right? They don't have the luxury of caring about the environment when all you can think about is food and where your next meal is coming from. You don't have the excess disposable income or time to be involved in what's my environment like. It's the wealthier countries that then have the luxury of saying, what do we do to clean up the rivers, to clean up the air, to clean up the neighborhood around us? And so wealth is the greatest benefit to the environment you can have, and energy is the starting point of all wealth. And so if you make that more expensive and less reliable, you're just absolutely taxing prosperity.
Yeah. And you are...
And sadly, that's what this administration is pursuing, right?
Right. And you are creating, I'll tell you, I have a lot of flowers in my yard. I love to garden. And I've noticed, and I've been commenting to my husband in recent months, that those people who are living with this scarcity mindset and they're allowing their lawns to die, they're filling things in with rocks and heating up their home at the same time so that they need to pollute more with more air conditioning. My yard is attracting all of the bees, which we know bee colonies have been collapsing over the past couple decades, and we've been told that is an environmental crisis. I'm attracting the bees, the butterflies, every kind of bug out there loves my yard, and I guarantee refuses to go in the yards of my neighbors who are currently killing our aquifers because they're not allowing the replenishment of the aquifers, because they've stopped watering their lawns, because so much fear. So often it seems as though, not seems, these environmental policies do not create a richer environment where we are protecting the other living things around us, be they animals or plants or other human beings. There is no flourishing with their mindset in the end.
And it's
Never.
actually counter.
Yeah, let me give you a perfect example of that, right? So the forest, the national forest used to be, other than tax revenue, was the largest source of revenue to the federal coffers because they treated the forest like a crop. It's in the Department of Agriculture. And so they try to maintain a healthy crop. And in Western forests, we can maintain 50 trees to the acre. We have enough water, enough sunlight, enough minerals for 50 trees to the acre. Well, someone came along with a one-size-fails-all policy and says, let's not cut any trees anymore. No more cutting trees. And so they started sprouting up all over the place. And, you've got your drink right there. If you've got your Diet Coke and you've got one straw in your Diet Coke, pretty good deal. You're happy. If people come along and you start getting 10 and 20 and 30 and 50 and 100 straws in your Diet Coke, well, you're part of that deal. Didn't turn out so well, right? Mm-hmm. You get 50 trees were good, 500 and 1,000 trees per acre. Now the trees choke each other out, so they don't have water, they don't have the minerals, they get sick and they die. There's beetle-killed forests all over the West. Now we've got just tinder for fires, and the federal government's actually managing our forests for maximum combustion. Yeah. So the number one source of PM 2.5 pollutants is the wildfires, right? It's like we had scientists from Georgia Tech come. They flew DC-8s through the wildfires, and they said it's like lighting an oil refinery on fire, the emissions from the wildfires. Worst source of pollution we can have. And it's all because some one-size-fails-all federal policy said, let's treat the forest like a museum instead of like a garden. Yeah. And exactly what you're talking about. And now the watershed for 1 million people on the Wasatch Front is one spark away from being gone. That's the sponge that holds our water. And because we're not tending to it like a garden, it's one spark away from being gone. And then it doesn't hold in all that moisture that delivers that when we need it. So it really is tending to our natural resources like a garden, like you're talking about. That's the best thing for the environment and the economy and the constitutional balance. But, they come up with these policies not knowing what our lands are like. And they end up devastating economies and natural landscapes.
No, it's global warming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think every day we're learning more and more that it's not ignorance as much as it is intentional to some degree. It really is about just destroying our way of life and eliminating our way of life.
Yeah. But, yeah. They're not this stupid.
Yeah, well, if you think about where they're pushing us in the energy and transportation economy, China produces about 75% of all the finished goods on wind, solar, battery. They control 90% of the raw materials. So if we're going to go wind, solar, battery, then we become completely dependent on China.
Well, and they are also the model. They're also a great model for clean air, right?
Yeah. And so while we're being pushed down the wind, solar, battery road, we don't even have enough minerals to get there from here. China's building a new coal-fired power plant every week. They're building 150 nuclear power plants while we're going headlong down the road that Germany's already proven doesn't work. California's already proven doesn't work. And our federal government's pushing us down that road. And so we've got to hold our ground and protect this energy transportation infrastructure, make sure we secure our lands and resources, and then push for regulatory reform on nuclear and NEPA and some of these other things.
Okay, Ken, where can people learn more about this issue? Where can they follow you?
Voteivory.com is my website. And so voteivory.com, I'm going to start putting more and more information on there. Really good place is realclearenergy.com. Realclearenergy.com. Okay. And all kinds of articles articles about I mean, it's just an aggregator of energy related information. But, you know, you look at what's happening and it really is sad. It's sad that they're taking the infrastructure of our economy that has built so much prosperity and completely upending it. If we let this federal usurpation, this power grab go, we've really given up our liberty, because energy is the master resource of prosperity and liberty.
Yeah. Thanks, Ken. And you are the guy who, as Kim mentioned at the beginning, who can see around the corner on these issues and do a really good job of making sure that other legislators and members of the public are aware of the things that you know. So thank you for coming on and sharing that with us.
Yeah, I'll just tickle you out for the next one. There's something called the Natural Asset Company. A year ago, they listed this on the New York Stock Exchange, and the Natural Asset Company, NAC, capital NAC, and what they're going to do is monetize the land assets, the environmental assets. They monetize them kind of like the non-fungible tokens. And they estimate that it's a $4 quadrillion market. And so they look to monetizing the asset, and then from the money they raise, they improve the environmental quality of the asset, and then sell that carbon credit, if you will. And I think that's really what's driving all of the ESG and driving all of the 30 by 30. And so that's something we need to dig into all by itself. But to have a look, research Natural Asset Company, and there's a lot of things behind that. So we can dig into that a little more next time.
Awesome.
That's the
Thank
smoking
you.
room.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for joining us, Ken.
All right, guys, always a pleasure.
Yeah, us too. So, yeah, there are a lot of things. And there's so many things coming at us from this direction that are on these issues that there's no way to keep up.
Yeah, it's hard to know. It's like swatting at flies right now, and they're hitting us from all sides.
Yeah.
So really it just comes down to, I think, exposing that it's a very left agenda.
Yeah.
And making sure we don't put people that think this way into seats of government
Well,
and
that's
policy
right.
making.
Because they use words that make us feel good. But we have got to be smarter than that. We have to look at the big picture.
Well, you know, it's yeah. So part of that is being smarter than that, but part of it is being willing to open our mouths, say something, fight it, and it is a fight.
Yeah.
And these people, it's very clear they want to destroy us. They want to destroy our families. They want to destroy our communities. They want to destroy
do you remember
our
Obama
environment.
said this? He said that we needed to be, and I can't remember the words that he used.
Fundamentally
but
transform.
He talked about fundamental transformation, but he also said that we were so much, our standard of living was so much beyond the rest of the world that we basically needed to take it down a
some
notch.
global
He literally
justice.
came out and said that, and that is what justice is to them. Right? That
So we
are
need to
all
make
the same.
sure
Yeah.
none of these people, and let's also make sure that we don't elect people that don't understand what this fight really looks like.
Yeah.
So it is a real fight for the very essence of our country, our freedoms, our families, and
Everything about the way we live. Everything about the way we live.
and we're right around the corner from an election. Do not elect anybody who thinks this way or who doesn't know
Or who
that this is the
not
landscape.
aware. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of Straight Talk with Kim and Carolyn. Thank you, Fosmu.
Oh, yeah. This is great stuff.
You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble. Yes, and anywhere you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time.